Hello everybody and welcome back to Lost Planeswalker. You are here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're doing the Squirreled Away Precon upgrade guide from Bloomburrow. So let's dive right in and check out those commanders. The two commanders in this deck we have here are Hazel of the Root Bloom and the Odd Acorn Gang. Two very fun commanders that bring very similar playstyles revolving around squirrels to the table. Hazel of the Root Bloom is 2 black-green legendary creature squirrel druid with tap and pay 2 life. Tap X untapped tokens you control, add X mana in any combination of colors. Then, at the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. If a token is a squirrel, instead create 2 tokens that are copies of it. One of the noticeable things about Hazel right off the bat is that this is a big mana commander. You're going to be wanting to cast a lot of things. You're going to be wanting to draw a ton of cards or casting those big X cost spells to just reap some big rewards. So she is a very interesting commander for that. Then we have the Odd Acorn Gang, 3 black-green legendary creature squirrel warrior with menace, trample, and reach. Squirrels you have, tap, target squirrel gets +2/+2, gains trample until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery, and whenever one or more squirrels you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Well, our commander here is perfect with menace, trample, and reach already, making this great for blocking or attacking, and then being able to buff up any of our other squirrels is just perfect. Either of these are going to care about you making a ton of squirrel tokens, so let's dive right in and look at those brand new cards. We'll talk about some cards to cut, and then finally, what I think you should add to this deck. So, starting out with some new cards, we have Gorman's Talent, Hazel's Brewmaster, Insatiable, Frugivore. So, Gorman's Talent, a single green that says during your turn, artifacts you control are food in addition to their other types, and have 2 tap, sack this artifact, gain 3 life. For level 2, for 2 and a green, whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, create a 3/3 green raccoon creature token. Then for 3 and a green, at level 3, whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So this obviously falls right into a food deck themed, and we certainly got a lot of food cards in this deck, so this is a very, very fun new card. Next is Hazel's Brewmaster, 3 and a black creature squirrel warlock with menace. When this enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and create a food. Food you control have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Hazel's Brewmaster. This doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best, but if you could hit some pretty notable things, this could be a very fun card to play. And then Insatiable Fungivore, 3 and a black creature rat berserker. When this enters, create a food token, then you may exile 3 cards from your graveyard if you do repeat this process. So you can create a ton of food by exiling cards from your graveyard. Then for 3 and a black, sack X foods, creatures you control get +X/+0 and gain menace until end of turn. A very cool pseudo overrun effect, giving stuff menace, meaning it's harder to block everything, and buffing up your team at the same time is a very cool ability. We're going to be able to create a ton of food, so this could be very powerful. Next up, we have Moonstone Eulogist, Rootcast Apprenticeship, and Scurry of Squirrels. Moonstone Eulogist is 3 black creature bat warlock with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a blood token. Then, whenever you sack an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on this, and you gain 1 life. Blood tokens are some of my favorite tokens that I think are underplayed. For a single mana, you discard, then draw cards. You get artifact synergy, you get sacrifice synergy. It's a really good way to also just fix your hand, or just dig deeper. So I think that this is a very cool card. This is going to pair up very nicely in a lot of decks that just care about artifacts in general, gaining you life and making this into a big threat. Rootcast Apprenticeship, 3 and a green sorcery, choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. 1, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Target player creates a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and target opponent sacks a non-token artifact. That last ability, honestly, is probably the best out of the bunch. There's a lot of really good versatility, but making your opponents sack non-token artifacts is key. And then Scurry of Squirrels, 2 and a green creature squirrel scout with Myriad, which I don't know if we've ever got double Myriad before, but it's very cool. When this deals combat damage to player, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So Myriad here is going to create a token copy of Scurry of Squirrels for each Myriad trigger, so you're actually going to create more squirrels attacking other opponents than this squirrel attacking whatever player you've chosen. And then if all 5 of those hit, you get to put 5 +1/+1 counters on a target creature you control. So very cool. Obviously, if you power this up with the Odd Acorn Gang, this can be a huge threat. And lastly, the last 2 new cards we got here are Swarmyard Massacre and Sword of the Squeak. Swarmyard Massacre, 3 black sorcery, create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. Then each creature that isn't an insect, rat, spider, or squirrel gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each creature you control that's an insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. This is a very powerful one-sided board wipe. All 4 of these Kindred types have very strong strategies that would love to play this card. It's going for a couple bucks right now, but I think these decks in particular are going to really love this, and it could go up in the future. And then Sword of the Squeak, 2 generic artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control with base power or toughness 1, which in a squirrel token deck is a lot. Then whenever a hamster, mouse, rat, or squirrel you control enters, you may attach the Sword of the Squeak to that creature. Great way to use it during combat. If that creature gets removed, if you do something during your second main, you can just pop it right back on one of your squirrels. So, like I mentioned, we're going to go over cards I think you should cut, but before we do so, just like to say thank you for watching. If you would please consider subscribing, that would mean the world to me. So, I only found 5 cards I think you should cut from this deck. There's probably some other stuff. I just didn't think these cards in particular worked very well. We have Casualties of War, Grim Backwoods, Nested Shambler, Plaguecrafter, and Hollow Willow Haven. These are all okay. I just think that there's some real downsides here. Casualties of War is just very expensive to destroy only one of each type, and I just don't think it's very powerful. Grim Backwoods, also a lot of mana to sack a creature to draw a card. For 5 mana, which this costs when you have to tap this as well, I would just play a card draw spell, honestly. Nested Shambler, there's not really any way to buff up this in this deck very well or easily, so I just don't think it fits in. Plaguecrafter, yeah, I get it. Sack one of your squirrels, but we really don't need this card in this deck. There's no strategy that revolves around this, so again, why? And then Wolf Willow Haven, yes, it ramps very slowly, and you can sack it to create a wolf, but there's just not a lot of value I think you're getting. There's no wolf synergy as well, so I don't know why this card was put in here. So now let's look at those cards I think you should add here, and all these cards are going to revolve around, you know, big X cost spells, generating a ton of mana off of our creatures, or just doing some very fun shenanigans in Golgari. So we have Awaken the Woods, Champion of Lambholt, and Circle of the Dreams Druid. Awaken the Woods, obviously big X cost that's going to create us a ton of tokens, and that's all we care about. Champion of Lambholt, creatures with power less than this can't block it, and whenever another creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this. We're going to be creating so many tokens that we're going to very quickly create a board that nobody can deal with, and Champion of Lambholt and all of our other creatures are going to be able to swing in and deal some big damage. And similarly, Circle of Dreams Druid is going to generate us a ton of mana based off of all of our creatures. Luckily, this doesn't distinguish creature tokens from creatures, so it just generates an insane amount of mana. Next 3 we got here are Coat of Arms, Exsanguinate, and Full Flowering. Coat of Arms typically isn't a card I like to play because it can get very complicated very quickly based on the number of creatures and types between all of your permanents. In addition, this is a symmetrical effect, so it does affect your opponent's boards as well. I would like to wager that we're probably going to have the biggest board with the most creature types playing a squirrel deck, but just something to be aware of. It's definitely a good add. Similarly, Exsanguinate here, one of my favorites. You're going to generate a ton of mana with Hazel, pay a ton into X, drain all your opponents for, I don't know, 10, 20 possibly, and just gain all that life back, swinging the game possibly very much in your favor. And very similarly, Full Flowering, you can populate X times, so creating X number of creature tokens off of Hazel seems very good, especially when you generate mana off of that. Next, we have Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, Marionette Apprentice, and Mirkwood Bats. Jaheira is going to give all of our tokens the ability to tap for green, which is very good, especially if our commander gets removed. Marionette Apprentice, again, whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses one. At some point, if we have a big enough board, if they go to wipe our board, we could just end the game there by dealing a ton of damage with this Marionette Apprentice. And Mirkwood Bats, of course, whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses a life. This is going to be one of the biggest threats on the board, and it's under $1, so it's definitely worth picking up and putting into this deck. Next, we have Peregrine Took, Pest Infestation, and Pitiless Plunderer. Peregrine Took is going to make you a ton of foods whenever another token comes in, and you can just sack those foods to draw cards with some great card advantage. Pest Infestation, one of my favorite removal spells because you get pests, you can destroy artifacts or enchantments, It's really versatile, and whenever it comes down, it's devastating because it's going to hit a bunch of targets all at once, especially with Hazel out there. And then Pitiless Plunderer, whenever another creature you control dies, create a treasure token. Hazel here turns treasure tokens just into infinite mana sources because you can tap them instead of having to tap and sack. So a great way to gain additional benefit. And lastly, we have Springheart Nantuko, Torment of Hailfire, and Warren Soul Trader. Springheart Nantuko is just a staple card that's really breaking Modern right now. There's a lot of really fun things we can do with it, and I'm so glad to see some new bestow cards that have some really good effects. Torment of Hailfire basically can be a game ender if you have enough mana. Making your opponents sack or lose life unless they discard or sack permanents is just perfect. I've played it a couple times. It can end up being salty, so just be aware that you don't want to end every game with Torment of Hailfire, but every once in a while, it's a great way to claim your victory. And then Warren Soul Trader, pay a life, sack another creature, create a treasure token. All those effects we have that gives us benefits for our creatures dying is just going to mean we're going to create a ton of treasure to cast even more spells to then tap with Hazel to just go crazy. Hazel of the Root Bloom, I think, is just a very, very good card. There's so many great strategies you can go along with. Obviously, you're going to be creating a ton of squirrels, casting a lot of big stuff. And if you end up picking up this deck, or did, and playing it, let me know in the comments down below what you think. This was a very, very fun deck to upgrade. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I think the additions I had are very good and make a lot of sense. So I hope you agree. But if you don't, let me know in the comments down below. In addition, if you would please leave a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe. That would mean the world to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And funny enough, today's Scryfall card of the day is Exsanguinate. Vampires don't consider patience a virtue, nor gluttony a sin. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.